Hey everyone, welcome to Kings Talk presented by Cap City Crown. This is Tony. With me as always, we got John. Last time we were talking, the Kings were about to enter their second 3 games of their 6 game road trip after dropping the first 3 at 1-2. After getting blown up by the Sixers, the Kings win against the Raptors and the Pistons to split that road trip 3-3, which I called. I predicted personally. John said 4-2. I don't know if you went
Whoa,
back and
whoa,
checked
whoa,
it.
whoa, 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 whoa! I ran back the tape on
Did
that.
you? What'd you say?
I don't think I actually gave a prediction.
So you just were like dancing around the question.
I
So
think so. I was dancing around, but I never really danced around 4-2. I said they could go 4-2 if they beat Milwaukee.
what are you saying? You went 3-3 like me? You just
I'm sa-
copycat?
I'm saying I'm saying I was not qualified, and I deserve ridicule for not participating.
So I'm right. I'm right and
Yeah,
you're
no,
wrong.
the situation for me is worse. It's
Just
worse
say
than
it.
we thought.
Just say I'm right.
Tony was right.
um, yeah.
Which,
So
frankly, I say a lot. But go on.
no, I mean the Kings split the road trip at 3-3, which is great. I especially after going down 2-4, or sorry, not 2-4, but going down 1-3 in their first 4 on that 6 game after getting absolutely dominated by the Sixers, which was one of those games where it was like, all right, this game's getting turned off before the end. But yeah, so in the road trip with back to back wins, and then they go back home on 2 days rest, and then they lose to the 8-23 Charlotte Hornets in a game the other night that was just frustrating to watch, especially with Sabonis and Fox having huge games. The rest of the Kings not so much, but there we are, all caught up. John, I miss anything, or what are your thoughts on everything I just said in the recap?
Yeah, I think Mike Brown said it best when he said it was a reality check because you were just coming off of a great close to that road trip as you were laying out with 2 excellent wins. That win in Toronto was crazy, and then they took care of business in Detroit, and then they just came back home with everything on their side. Fox feeling the best he's felt in a month. Sabonis continuing to play not just like an all-star, but an elite center. And you're seeing guys like Harrison Barnes playing pretty decently. You're seeing guys like Keegan Murray starting to turn it on. Monk getting together since Fox returned. He was kind of like a little off. Him and the bench unit were off for about 3 games there or so. And over the last, 3 or 4, they really figured it out. And so on and so forth with the rest of the roster. Really, everything started to get going. And so to come home and slip on the banana peel, so to speak, was rough because I think one of the most important points about the next 18 games, but going into that Charlotte game, it was the next 19 games, that 15 of those 19 games are at home. And it's important to not only take advantage of any home game, but to rack up as many wins in this favorable stretch of time. Um, because you're going to need those as the competition in the West starts heating up, as things start going down to the wire. It's, as Jason Anderson pointed out, and I think a piece he did for the SAC B, um, it's just absolutely imperative for seeding in the playoffs and the Kings' chances to be more than a play-in team. And so it was severely disappointing to see them lose to Charlotte. And there's so many glaring negatives in that game. It was, despite, Fox and Sabonis playing so well, it was just ugly in so many other places. And you can only hope, and you almost expect them to at this point, to bounce back against the Lakers. But not off to the start that you want to get to with that 19-game stretch that we're talking about.
Yeah, and you needed to beat the Hornets last night or 2 nights ago. something that's helped me cope with the loss is thinking about how the Kings maybe 5 years ago or at any point during the 16-year playoff drought when they'd go in and beat a team that was much better than them. Um, we're usually on that side, I guess, right? We're doing the upset, but now it kind of feels not nice, but it's like I can appreciate, I guess, being on the other side about being upset by a team because the Kings are actually a team with playoff seeding right now. So, I mean, a loss is a loss and it's frustrating, but I guess thinking about it that way for me helped me deal with it. But I agree, you can't blow chances like that against an 8-23 Hornets team. Should have won that game. Not a good way to kick off the that good homestand. They have a 6 games in a row at home, and then like you said, what was it, 15 out of their next 19 are at home. So you gotta capitalize on every game you can, and that was definitely a game they should have won, but man, I mean, there was just a lot of issues. I mean, free throw shooting was horrendous. Um, defensive rebounding terrible. And it seemed like Sabonis was the only one grabbing rebounds that game. But you got any more insight for that game?
Oh, you hit it there, but I mean, also the 72 paint points for Charlotte.
Yeah,
And I mean, it's an interesting outlook that you mentioned. Like, there might be a positive outlook in that, well, this underachieving team, I think it's fair to say, due to injuries and the fact that their stars haven't been on the floor a lot. Um, you know, it's a good sign for how the Kings stand in relation to the rest of the league that they came out and played one of their best games of the season. I mean, you look up and down the board for Charlotte, a lot of guys had really, really good games. And it comes down to, though, I mean, like they scored 72 paint points, and Mike Brown said it after the game. They just the Kings let the Hornets get too comfortable from the beginning. The first 3 or 4 field goals for the Hornets were easy dunks or layups at the rim. And that was a constant theme all night. And they were just getting, out physicaled inside, seen in the rebounds. And they just were generally off in that defensively they had some miscues where, as again, Mike Brown pointed out, the low man didn't always step in at the right time or do so as bravely as he would like. And also the weak side defense wasn't as good. And there were some examples that I pointed out in the recap just off of a glance. And I'm sure that his film session was quite firm and had plenty more examples. But, that also led a huge part into the paint points. But again, that lack of being sharp was really laid out in the 54% from the free throw line, 17 of 31. Oof. You get to the line 31 times, which is terrific. And you leave 14 points on the board.
Man.
Come on.
That's how you lose. You lose by 6 points and you leave 14 at the line. It's embarrassing. It's awful.
And Mike Brown was like, because I think James Ham asked him about the free throws. He's like, this is another game that you lost because you missed free throws. And Mike Brown kind of got a little cute or specific and was like, well, no, we would have stolen the game maybe if we made those free throws, because he was pointing out that the defense was the main reason that they lost, which is fair. But still, you lose by 6 and you leave 14 at the line. I mean, like, what are you doing? You lost. You could have won that game. Like, you lost because you didn't make free throws. That is totally fair to say. And that was like that Clippers game, and even like that New York Knicks game a week or so ago. And I said last week, I said, I don't want to be overreacting here, but you don't want to see this. And they kind of cleaned it up for the rest of the road trip. Didn't become an issue, but then they come back home and it's part of that issue. And again, I don't know. I kind of almost attribute it to they were just generally off all the way around, aside from their 2 best players.
Yeah, I always hate watching the Kings lose when Sabonis and Fox have good games. And it's nice to see Fox kind of get back into his usual form after having I think it felt like a 10 game or so stretch where he just looked subpar. And yeah, he had that foot injury, but he said he was like dealing with it since November. And he looked, he looked good in times at that, like between November 5th and now, or, when that report came out where he was still playing well. So it was kind of weird that he went on such a bad stretch, but it's nice for him to get back to his usual self, and he's scoring buckets really well. He's attacking the basket, which I think is huge, something he wasn't doing during that little slump. And Sabonis has just been, I mean, that dude's an all-star. It's not even a question anymore. He's an all-star, leading the league in rebounds, leading the league in double doubles. He has what, three, I think, 20 and 5 games this year already. It's crazy. Dude's a monster. And it just sucks watching Fox score 37, watching Sabonis throw up another 20-25 game, and then no one else steps up. So it's just like a wasted opportunity on top of playing the Hornets, right? So
Yeah. And also, another contributing factor to why they lost, because the Kings played fairly decently in the second and third quarters in that Charlotte game. And they won both quarters, and Charlotte didn't score more than 30 points in either of them. But, and maybe it's not all the way because of this guy, but Harrison Barnes left the game after he checked out near the end of the third, didn't play at all in the fourth, out with a right quad contusion. He was limited in practice on Tuesday, and as of recording this, we don't know the status for Wednesday's game, but it's plausible that he could miss it. First of all, he was doing a good job, as he's done lately, of getting to the line, even though, as we were pointing out, the Kings were missing from the line. But his presence and his abilities and kind of ability to kind of take charge and kind of make the right play, especially when things kind of get stagnant or muddy, I think that factored into it as well. And now we're looking at a situation where, well, because Barnes hurt the quad, it seemed like after he picked up that steal, I think in the second quarter, and then went for the layup, it was contested. I think it ended up being a goaltend. And he was grabbing at his leg. And I don't know. It depends how serious it is, but it kind of, first of all, you wonder about the injury, but then also you wonder about, oh, that's going to exploit a little bit of a roster hole, or at least kind of like shine a bigger light on it. No,
dude, there's so much talk about the backup center position to Sabonis, but I'm still not over cutting Kent Bazemore in training camp when Barnes hasn't had a damn backup at the small forward position since being in Sacramento. And except for the half the season, Kent Bazemore was in Sac. And now Barnes might miss a game, or he's going to need limited time. And especially with the quad, and Barnes, he just has that habit of slowing down during the season, and this quad probably won't help that and may lead to that. So yeah, if you're down your small forward, such an important position, it just it just makes me scratch my head still, knowing that we picked up Chima Moneke, and I like Chima Moneke, but I mean, why? The dude's never going to play. He got one chance earlier this season, and he's going to get chances in garbage time. You could have had a legit wing player that could have filled in for Barnes, even giving him rest off the bench or coming in last night, like when you need a legit small forward. It just, I don't know. Can you sign someone? Can you cut Maneke? It's frustrating to me still. Off of that, it made no sense. And it just felt like Brown was playing favorites. Like the one downside to Brown so far, in my opinion, is that he just chose all his Nigerian players, which I get, but it's gonna show up now if Barnes misses some time, because I think Bazemore for sure should have made the team, or at least some backup small forward. But here we are, and Barnes might miss some time now, so, or at least need a legit backup, if anything. So
yeah. Well, you don't want an injury to linger. We were just talking about
Yeah,
Fox.
yeah,
So you want, especially in Barnes is 30. So, while that's not ancient, it's not young. Um, so you want to give him the adequate time off to be able to rest. I mean, again, we are kind of working with the situation where it's not like he didn't practice on Tuesday. He was limited. So that's a good sign. But again, it's just like, you don't want to make that worse. You don't want that to linger. You want to just nip that in the bud now. One would hope, especially because Barnes is so important to the team. And, if you don't have depth there, might as well minimize that, minimize the ability for that to get exploited. But I mean, you bring up a good point that it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess the question that I have now is like, well, what's the starting lineup look like if Barnes isn't in it? Does Herter slide down to the 3? Does Murray slide up to the 3?
Does Davis start at the 3?
Or does Davis start at the 3? Does Akpala start?
I know,
Um,
and
I
it
almost
brings up
feel
so
like
much holes.
just based on what you said, and I totally agree that he just has so much faith in guys. Um, Although he was pretty blatant about the other night about Chimezi Metu not working out at the 5, as he was really everybody, which we'll get to. But that that just kind of like almost undying trust he has in them, and I get it. We've always pointed it out with Maneke, there's upside. Akpala, there's upside. Metu, there's something with Metu, but it's just like, this is exactly what you're worried about. And man, I don't know. It's just like, I feel like, well, as I was saying there, it's like I do feel like that would mean Akpala would be getting probably the start, in my opinion, based on that trust alone.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they're playing like a talented wing, because then you could justify it like, well, he can go out there and check the guy and keep him from getting off to a good start, and which could help, as you saw with Charlotte, the ability for all 4 or 5 of their starters to get it going early. Um, that was kind of, I guess, not Plumlee, but Nick Richards. But you want to prevent that, and so I guess you could see the justification there. But it is a problem, and now it's like it's next man up, but it's like now the backup that wasn't there is doubly not there. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
guys have to step up, and I don't know. Maybe since everybody has some faith to varying degrees in Keita, maybe maybe you see some of that in the rookie Keon Ellis. Kind of play the wing a little bit, I guess, but I don't know. It's just, make a good point. That could be the biggest critique of Mike Brown, um, favoring less experienced guys uh, instead of sticking with a guy like Bazemore, which we said, he didn't have a great year in LA last year, but it's like, still, that is the most viable backup the Kings have had for Harrison Barnes since HB's been here. So I don't know. It stands out. We'll see what happens, but going forward, you can only hope that this injury is not a big deal and that Barnes is going to be fine. But if it's not, they got to be able to manage it, and there's going to be a need, whether it's load management or a game or two off. There's going to be a need for somebody to step up, and it's going to be very hard to fill in Harrison Barnes' shoes with what the Kings have.
yeah. And like you already said, HB is a very important player. And you have to plug in someone, like even like 50 to 75% of him, right? But I mean, unless you honestly move Herter to the 3 and I think you start Herter at the 3 and then start Davis at the 2. I think that's your best call,
Mm-hmm.
personally. Akpala, I don't know. I just don't trust his offense. And
I
Davis
agree.
yeah.
I agree. I just think Mike Brown would do
Yeah,
that.
because he loves his boys. He loves his national team boys. But I don't know. We'll see. Luckily, Herter can play the 3 decently, but I don't know. Davis has looked good as of late when he gets his minutes too, so that's good. But
Yeah, but it's
David,
just like
it's nice having
again
Davis.
though,
Mm-hmm.
again it's just like Barnes, defensive player of the game, 2 nights in a row to close that road trip.
DPOG.
That's right, and for good reason. I mean, he shut down Siakam in the second half, and then he guarded Bogdanovich in Detroit, and those are essentially the two best players on each of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
And he was great. And it's just like it's so nice to see. And we've pointed this out for the last couple of weeks, um, wondering when or if he'll get a contract extension. Is that it seems like the best bet given the limited options. Um, that defensive end cannot be ruled out or forgotten because he's so good on that end too. Just as a team defender, an experienced player, and what he's done over the last couple of games has really shown that he against certain matchups he's really good. He's got great size and ability to disrupt guys like that, and that's really impressive. So I don't know. That just kind of underlines this,
Yeah.
borderline reason to worry.
Mm-hmm. I guess we'll find out sooner or later on if he's gonna play or miss time. But at one point this season, Barnes is gonna miss a game, right? We're gonna have this same exact conversation. So even if he doesn't miss tonight, he's gonna miss a game eventually this year. I don't know when the last time Barnes played all 82 games. And he doesn't. I don't know. I can't remember if he misses. Like I said, I think he usually goes down during the middle of the season. Last year he played 77 games. But that's like 5 games you miss without that small forward. So he's played 82 games once in his career. And he's usually up there in the 70s during full seasons. Or 2021 he played 58. I forget if that's a shortened season. I don't think it was it?
Well, yeah, it was. That was right
It
off
was.
of
That was the
2021,
year after
22.
COVID. 2021.
Well, didn't that get cut short?
I think it got cut short, yeah. But I think there was like at least 72 games that year.
Right.
But he only played 58, so he missed some time. But my point is, he's going to miss time this year, even if it's not tonight. He's going to miss time eventually, and we're going to have the same conversation. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see our first lineup without Barnes tonight, and maybe it works out well. But I'm still upset that Bazemore didn't make the team.
It's a
That's
good
all you got
point.
to say.
It's a good point. And that kind of moves along to kind of another issue that is almost also tied in a way because Sabonis has played 39 minutes or more in like the last 4 games or whatever. And I think, or whatever it is, I don't know. Let me pull that up. But he's been playing basically 40 minutes a lot over the last 4 or 5 games. And I think we all know where this conversation is going. The Kings have been searching for an answer at the backup five, and they just have not gotten a consistent solution. And we all know Rashawn Holmes, starter for a few years here in Sacramento, lost a starting job. There's a lot of hope that the Kings could have him step in to being the backup to Sabonis. I mean, how great would that be? 2 starter level centers, one after the other, with Holmes providing great energy and, with the rest of the second unit. I mean, it's a match made in heaven, but
Yeah.
it's just not panned out. And he, as Mike Brown said after the Charlotte game, he had a pretty long leash. I mean, he was the backup center for 8 games, and he was pretty miserable in all 8 of those games. And then Chimezie Metu stepped in. He was pretty good for almost a month, it felt like. He was pretty good for a while, for the majority of the time. Pretty adequate, mixed in perfectly with the second unit, running the floor, getting those lobs. But it just seemed like, especially on this road trip against some of these more imposing teams where his size mismatch was there, but it was also just like you could see Metu he was not as sharp. And also he played with, kind of outside of himself. I think it was that Toronto game where he took like 3 field goal attempts that were all pretty lousy. And I think the last 2 in particular were just a little forced. And it's just like, dude, you are the last option out there. Like you're scoring, okay, if you get a wide open three, your coach probably wants you to shoot that. He passed that up and made like a way more difficult shot out of it. So it's just like that is the last thing you want to be doing, dude. Like if it's not a wide open three or a lob or something or a wide open dunk that you earn, then get out of here. So it's kind of just a bad, mix of, a bad recipe for Metu over the last couple of games. And Mike Brown's been forced to go to Keita. And like in relation to Metu's last few games, it's like Keita's been, you could almost argue that he's been marginally better, but it's like we're looking for a consistent solution here. Keita could be that at the beginning of next season or the season after. I don't dispute that at all. I also don't think that, if the Kings were playing poorly this year, that it would be a terrible idea to let him develop in the league. But it's like you need to be winning games, and this backup center thing is kind of a big deal. I don't think you can wait around for this guy to kind of mature, and I don't think that Mike Brown is at all infatuated with shot blocking. So it's all about your inside presence, your ability to play with the guys as a cohesive unit. That takes some time, and he's been able to practice with the team through training camp as a two-way player contract. But excuse me and a bunch of other people if they don't believe that he's going to be a legitimate answer there. I feel like you almost have a better bet of just waiting on Holmes to figure it out. I don't know. Maybe that's cynical, but you just don't have an option right there. And like I said, Sabonis is playing a lot of extra minutes, and he's great and he's doing fine. And it's December right now, but it takes a wear and tear. And, Mike Brown said, as anybody who could guess, that he would think that you just can't get away with playing Sabonis 40 minutes a night. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not sustainable. So this is a big issue. I mean, do you have any thoughts just on what the Kings have? We'll talk about outside options in a second, but just thinking about the situation now. I mean, do you think it's a matchups based thing could be a good idea, or just kind of revolving to different guys as it seems to be the case? He's kind of sticking with Keita maybe for now. I don't know.
I mean, before I start talking about it, I just remember at the beginning of the season or before the season started, we rated each positional group. And the center was the best because we thought they had the most depth. And I mean,
it appeared they did.
And Lynn's been out too, and so I think Kata's only up because Lynn's out. Because you don't put Kata in there over Lynn, in my opinion. Kata is so raw still, and he's out there. And he kind of looks lost, and he fouls a ton. It's like he picks up a lot of quick fouls. So I think he's only in there at the moment because Lynn's out. I think Lynn would be getting those minutes over Kata. And yeah, I was going to call him Mamba. Mezzi Mamba is your boy.
He has those moments. He just hasn't had them this season at all.
I know, right? He's looked bad over the last several games. He started off good, and I understand why he took that backup center spot over Rashawn, but he has not looked good recently either. Rashawn, is just time to give him his chance again. I'm still confused why he doesn't fit too well. I guess his defense. I don't know. It's just he looks. I mean, I know he looks lost out there, and he's been awful. But I'm just kind of surprised he hasn't bought into Brown's system. He was our starting center for 2.5 years, and now he's just literally a non-factor now. It's so weird. I don't get it. But
yeah.
It's
just on Holmes for a second. It's just like
yeah.
You pointed it out at the beginning of the season that he doesn't look all the way engaged out on the floor. And you could almost see that it was a night and day difference when Metu went out there. I mean, he took advantage of his opportunity with enthusiasm. Whereas Holmes was kind of almost just like wasn't even like considering that he was either interested in playing or that maybe he'd get replaced. I don't know. There seemed to be kind of a motivational thing that was down that you pointed out, and I agree with. But when you see him play, even now, like a couple months in the season after all this practicing and being in the system so long, you see, Sabonis has turned into this defensive. Like everybody's looking at his talking about his defense. Thank God, because he's a smart defender, and Mike Brown coached him up to be a great rim defender, to use fundamentals and verticality, staying straight up, those kinds of things. He's got smaller players, guarding the restricted area. Yet, and even see Metu have good fundamentals sometimes. Not as good as Sabonis, not nearly as good, but you see him kind of, at least you can see him learning and having learned and trying to execute. But you just don't see that with Holmes. When he plays defense, he's down, he's backpedaling, he's hesitant on contesting shots, and he doesn't really know what he's doing, and he's getting into bad position, and he's trying to guard with his hands a lot, and he got a couple fouls, I think, in that Toronto game. He just, it's almost just like that's not his style of defense or something, because he's just not applying any of the lessons that you see just ubiquitously used by the rest of the team. You don't see any of it in Holmes. The only time you see Holmes doing something good is he puts down a push shot or a pick and roll works out for him. It's the only time. But yeah, I kind of interrupted you there.
No, it was more of a question. I'm just surprised he's been just that bad. He was a starting center and now he's nothing. Like Sabonis learned, right? He wasn't that great of a defender. Now he's pretty decent, right? And Holmes, what is he like? Just trying not to learn? Mike Brown gave him the opportunities, and he was given the backup centers opportunities at the beginning of the season, and he's probably given the chance in practice to try to prove himself, but is he just like refusing to learn?
I have no idea. I guess that is just the piece of mystery there.
Yeah,
I mean, he was asked. Mike Brown was asked, like, why hasn't I think it was worded as, why hasn't Holmes been given a longer leash? And it's like Mike Brown pointed out, it's like, well, he did have a long leash. He played terribly, as we pointed out. He didn't quite say that, but it seems like there wasn't any clear indication in Mike Brown's answer. It just seems like it's just not earning time. So I don't know. But again, you mentioned Lynn, and that was the one guy I neglect. I constantly neglect Lynn. And that's not because, I don't consider he's there. I don't consider him an option. But again, Lynn's another one of those guys where it's like, he's not the answer to that. He's just he doesn't have the mobility for it, I don't think. I think he's such a mismatch nightmare to just get him switched on to somebody smaller, and then that's it. I mean, you've seen it, I think, in limited time from Len, and it's just, he's more like you want him to go out there and battle with bigger teams. He probably would have been helpful. It was kind of unfortunate he got sick on the second half of that East Coast trip, because he probably could have been helpful in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting. But I mean, like, I don't know. He's definitely not a nightly guy, I think. So that's why I almost think, not to bounce around too much here, but just the general idea of the backup center. That's why I almost think like kind of platoon it almost. Because if Metu's problem is like kind of size, I mean, if he can kind of hone in back to playing the right way, he could be good in higher pace situations against a team like the Warriors or something like that, or other Western Conference teams. And then Len against Philadelphia, or even against Charlotte last night when Nick Richards was just getting on the glass. It's like, that'd be interesting to at least be able to throw him out there. So maybe as a platoon, the option. I mean, I don't know.
I think, and that's your only option at this point, right? You have to platoon it. It has to be a matchup based system. You put Lin or Keita against the bigger guys. You put Metu against the smaller ball lineups. And if you even want to try to throw Holmes in there, there's probably, options or situations where Holmes can play the floor. Maybe. I don't know. But, I mean, I think, and I don't have too much more to say on this, except that it seems like the Kings are going to have to make a move for a backup center, because like you said, Sabonis can't be playing 40 minutes a night, and the backup centers are just so bad right now behind them, and it really kills the Kings bench, and their defense is subpar, their offense is subpar. They also kind of like look lost out there, and Sabonis needs a solid backup center behind him. That at least the King, not just Sabonis, the Kings need someone for like a placeholder while he gets his 15-20 minutes of rest a night. Not even 20, like 15, right? I don't know what
Mhm.
he's averaging a game, but probably around there, maybe 18. But
Yeah. Mike Brown said 6 to 8 minutes a half.
yeah, okay, yeah, 16-ish minutes. So I don't know. Do you have anything more to say
Well, I
on
would
the
say
platoon?
just kind of like the half-hearted appeal for Holmes, which is the only appeal for Sean Holmes at this point. One of the things that you could say is like, well, first of all, searching for answers. I guess it can't really hurt. But another thing, I mean, if you're looking at a situation where Holmes doesn't have a place on this team, maybe it'd be a way to shop him or like advertise him. I don't know. I mean, maybe you don't want to do that because you don't want to hurt his stock anymore. But I don't know. The backup five, I think you're right. Kind of moving on here to looking at trading for a backup five. I mean, um, I think it was last week. I think it was Eric Pincus again. Uh, Pointed out that the Detroit Pistons and Nerlens Noel had moved on, or had mutually agreed, I should say, that a trade would be best for both parties because Nolan and Noel ended up there in a salary dump uh, after being on the Knicks, and he's just not in the rotation right now. And the Kings were listed amongst some other teams like the Trailblazers, um, who also appear to be looking for a backup center. Um, that the Kings were part of the group of teams that were asking about him and engaging in talks. And so, kind of thinking about outside options, there are a few, and Nerlens Noel is kind of the first one that pops into mind here, based on that report from last week. Uh, I think one of the things that stands out about him is that he was really good as the backup center for the Knicks like 2 years ago, and he got hurt a little bit and kind of fell out of the rotation last year. And I just don't think he's that same player necessarily. But I think, and this is probably the case with all these guys we're going to mention, he would be probably a far better bet as a consistent option. Um, what do you like about Nerlens Noel?
What I like about Nerlens is he kind of reminds me of like a taller Rashawn Holmes. Gets most of his buckets around, in the paint area, and he has a high shooting percentage from what I remember. Um, and he's a good defender. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know we were talking about Rashawn Holmes. Mike Brown isn't infatuated with shot blocking necessarily, but Nerlens can get those blocks. And defense is defense. He's a good defender. He's a good presence down low. That's what the Kings are really lacking with their backup centers. And yeah, Metu can play straight up defense, but he's very undersized as a center, and it's definitely showing. So Nerlens is also a little more mobile, kind of where Lynn, he has the size, but he's a mismatch nightmare. So I think that's what I like about Noel. He shoots high percentage shots near the basket. Um, and he doesn't do too much. Like his shots are under the basket, really. And
Mm-hmm.
then good defender and more mobile than like he's still a big guy, but also mobile. So he won't get terrorized on the mismatches. So I like Noel a lot. It's nice that he's available. I think the Kings should try to go after him. I know there's a couple of teams after him too, and he's not the same player like you said he was a couple of years ago. But if you can get some version of that guy, he'd be better than any of the backups they got right now.
Yeah, he definitely has the best mix for his skill set. Kind of offers a little bit of everything that you're looking for, as you're pointing out there. I think he would be a lot better. It's just like a question of, and this is the case with everything. It's like, what are you going to give up? Um, And I guess I don't know. I mean, like it's hard to gauge. I don't know what the Kings would have to give up. There's a lot of people. I think you could go ahead on the trade machine, and but because Noel, I keep saying Noel. Noel makes like 9.2, 9.3 million. So you're like talking about like Len and Terrence Davis or something like that with maybe a second rounder or something or some mix of contracts. I don't know. I'm not 100% claiming to be an expert on predicting trades or shaping out potential trades, but because I'm not really 100% sure what Detroit's looking for there. But as I understand it, Detroit's just kind of looking for maybe I think it said in the report that they're just looking for a way to get rid of them. They're not looking for extreme value. They just don't want to take on money for next year. So maybe a guy like Trey Lyles gets included in the trade. I don't know. Um, there's a couple. Terrence Davis has an expiring contract. But again, it's like those are guys you kind of want to keep, but you do have to give up something to get something. But Nerlens Noel would be a good option if they can pull it off. I think we can both agree.
100%. Yeah,
And,
Noah would be great behind
yeah.
Sabonis
And I
if
guess,
if he can do what he was doing in New York.
or some like a slight variation of it. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
huge drop off. Like
Yeah,
just
hopefully he's not like Rashawn Holmes in it.
run the floor, be
Mm-hmm.
engaged defensively, buy into what they're doing. I'm sure he would. I mean, like you're sitting on the end of the bench in Detroit, and it's like you get traded to whether it's Portland or Sacramento or something like that. Like that's probably going to fire you up a little bit, get you really engaged in it, and you know
Mm-hmm.
he's been in the league so long, so he knows what he's doing. He's got his he'll figure it out, I'm sure. So I think that would be a good pickup if they could pull it off. Another guy that often gets brought up, I don't think there's really any specific reports related to it, but he's been kind of thrown around for since the beginning of the season, really. Mo Bamba in Orlando, just even though he signed like a 2-year deal or whatever in the offseason, um, for whatever reason, um, he's kind of just there, and people are positing that the Kings could trade for him and that he would be a good option. Before I ask you about it, I want to say that I do not think that that would be a good move. I just don't. I don't really like Mo Bamba. I think whenever you read things about him from being a young player to even now, he's not regarded as like a high energy or high motor guy. He's not regarded as a necessarily smart or high instincts player. And I just think, I don't know. I mean, like if you're talking about a situation where if you're desperate, there's no doubt that he would be better than the other three or four guys on the roster for the Kings. Um, but I don't know. I just don't really. I feel like he's my least favorite of the options. You know what I mean? What do you think about Mo?
Um, yeah, I get what you're saying. Mo Bamba, I think he still just has a lot of that promise. Like when he got drafted, it's like, man, this guy is what, like 7'1", 7'2", huge wingspan, just like an athletic freak. And he never really panned out. This is his fifth season in the league now. And I mean, in his fourth year last year was his best year at 10 points and 8 rebounds a game, which, it's not crazy for a lottery pick like himself. But he's on a $10 million contract, so again, it'd be kind of like a tough trade. You'd have to find some pieces. And he's probably worth a little more than Noel at this point too, which might make him hard to trade for, considering he's also shooting
Right.
close to 39% from three, which is for a big man exceptional. Um, but I mean, I think he'd be good. He can block shots as well. He can be a presence down low, which the Kings need, while also being decent on offense, right? He can play both sides of the floor well, at least for this offense and defense. But like you said, it's more than that. If he is a low energy guy, Mike Brown, he's all about culture, higher energy guys, guys who are coachable. So if Bamba doesn't fit that mold, then and it seems like McNair and Mike Brown are kind of on the same wavelength too. Then it doesn't seem like Bamba will get touched. But again, I think like his skill set would fit this team well. But at the same time, like I like Noel a lot, and he seems like he's more fit for that role. Kind of like how I liked how I was saying earlier, how Quinn Cook was the better player, but Della Badova would be better for that third string point guard role. That's
Yeah.
how I kind of feel about Noel and Bamba. Like, yeah, Bamba's the better player, but I might rather have Noel come off the bench because he knows his role better.
Yeah. That's actually a good way of looking at that. But yeah, I think Bamba probably not. It's less realistic, as you pointed out. I think that's a big thing that the Kings could actually pull off a trade to get him. And I think this is the case with all these trades. It'd be a little ways away and probably involve multiple teams. So maybe there'd be a way for the guys to land and not necessarily land in their lap. That's not a good way to put that, but to finagle a way to get a guy over here, I guess. But I just don't know if Bomba's as worth it. And I think you make a good point for other guys maybe being better suited for the specific role. But another guy that kind of gets brought up a lot, and we just saw him the other night, and you talk about Noel on Detroit. Detroit's got young. They got Jalen Duren. They got Marvin Bagley. They're not looking for centers or anything like that. Orlando, they're neither they. Bamba does not. He's getting pushed out for playing time. Why would they be looking for a center? You could kind of make the argument that Charlotte kind of wants to get younger a little bit at the center position. And while it wouldn't be the most ideal option for Charlotte, it kind of seemed plausible in the offseason for a second there. And it would work out in just a straight up trade. I don't know how realistic it is, but Mason Plumlee for Rashawn Holmes, I think someone pointed out on Twitter. I kind of shrugged and went like, if Charlotte wanted to do that, I mean, I think Plumlee is not ideal, but I think he kind of fit in. I think he'd be a net positive in the backup role. I think he's a solid player. Obviously, he would just be for this season. And I think that if you take the standpoint that Keita could be the backup center a year from now, well, then like Plumlee's that perfect stopgap guy, So that becomes interesting. Again, I don't know. There's no reports attached to that. But I know that Charlotte does want to kind of look at it, get a different look at center, maybe a younger one. I mean, they drafted Mark Williams, but I think he's hurt right now. So I don't know. Something to think about, right?
Yeah, I mean Plumlee would be good. He's averaging 9.8 points, 9.3 rebounds, almost a double guy. Definitely. So I mean, based off of that alone, it's a guy who's down low, battling. Not too sure about his defense. Not like a big Mason Plumlee follower, but I mean, if you can somehow snag him, like I don't think he can hurt at all. I think the Kings just really need a big body down there and someone who can play adequate defense. If Plumlee can offer that, I think I don't have too much to say about Plumlee just because I don't know his game too much, even though we just watched him a couple nights ago. But if he can provide that for the Kings, then yeah, I'm all for it. Really. Wait, what's his contract situation?
I think he's making about the same as Holmes, or like I think he's making $9 million as well. I looked at it earlier. Could pull it up.
Okay. I mean, Plumlee would be awesome. He's a guy who would be grabbing rebounds too. And like I said, just battling down low. So I wouldn't mind Plumlee. I feel like I would need to look a little more into him though.
He's making eight. He's making the cap hit is $9 million.
Oh, okay.
Well, and I think it did work in the trade machine as just a straight up trade with Holmes, but I don't know how realistic that scenario is. But
yeah, I don't either.
I think we were pointing to though. I think he would just as a guy that can integrate. I mean, like we're talking about Nerlens Noel being able to do that. I think Plumlee is equally as able to do that. I mean, obviously he's not as athletic as Nerlens Noel, but I think in terms of mirroring Sabonis defensively, like Plumlee can do that. You get some good coaching on him, probably integrate pretty decently on that side of the ball, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think he could plug in decently here.
Yeah. Again, it's just like how realistic is it? How how feasible is it? And is Charlotte really looking at not necessarily even they'd probably be fine moving on from Plumlee. They don't have any kind of future attachment to him, but
Mm-mm.
it's like does Charlotte actually want to? I mean, Holmes is not giving anybody any reason to put him on the
I
floor.
know.
So
Yeah.
that kind of becomes almost the wall there from Plumlee. But
Mm.
um, two other guys, and I'll just kind of include this in the same conversation because this is kind of my own conjecture, maybe both of us. But two other guys that I feel like one got signed there this offseason is not getting a ton of playing time, although he might with the injury to Anthony Davis. And then the other guy is a 25-year-old promising center that the Kings would probably love to have. And I don't know if the Spurs are necessarily giving open to giving up. And again, for talking about, a guy like Bamba being hard to attain, it would probably be somewhat similar with him. But the first guy is Damian Jones, and the second guy is Zach Collins. Murmurings from fans here and there, and just kind of like looking at centers that aren't necessarily, centers that you could plausibly plug in, and also maybe you're kind of looking at I don't know, that's kind of a best case scenario, maybe more so for Collins than Jones. But I mean, both those guys, in my opinion, would be great if you could figure that out, a way to do it. And again, I don't know if you're talking about the other one's not necessarily being 100% realistic. This one is a complete kind of gander. I mean, I don't know how realistic it is that they could even go after any of these two. But hey, man, if they could get Damian Jones back, we're a fan of Damian Jones. Or if they could get Zach Collins, former Gonzaga Bulldog, backing up with a Gonzaga Bulldog, that would be freaking awesome, right?
Yeah,
And that
there
would be
you
so
go.
good. I mean, Zach Collins would fit right in with the age group that the Kings are trying to get in here. I mean, he's got a lot of promise, but I don't know. I don't know what San Antonio's thoughts are on him because I think they want to move Podol. I never know. Am I saying that right?
I say Poidle. Poidle. I don't know if I'm saying that right either.
Well, they're trying to get rid of him, I think. They're going to move
Yeah.
on from him. He's going to be a good trade chip. So, I mean, and Zach Collins starts in his place, and Zach Collins, again, is 25 years old, just turned 25 a month
Mm-hmm.
ago. So, it is – I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs are like, yeah, that's our center. I mean, if Popovich is sticking around, I can't think that their rebuild's going to be too long. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. Zach Collins, drafted by the Kings, if you remember, traded for the 10th the 10th and 20th pick or 10th and 15th pick that turned into Justin Jackson. It was the 10th pick and it turned into the 15th and 20th for Justin Jackson and Harry Giles when they traded him to Portland. Injury history, been injured most of his career early on. He's still young, just at 25. Can hit the three ball, kind of. He can kind of stretch the floor out. Takes a couple threes a game, but I just don't know if it's a big question. Like, is San Antonio shopping this guy,
Right.
especially with shopping Poeltl at the same time? I wouldn't mind Zach Collins again. Not the most familiar with his game, but I don't think again he's better than Metu, what Holmes is providing at the moment, and Leonard Cada. So I'm totally open to Zach Collins if you can grab him. And like you said, he would fit in this age group. And if you could, if you can grab him over and put him into this core for the next couple of years, that'd be awesome.
Well, and
I
also look at Collins' assist numbers. I think he's the best passer out of this group of centers. I mean, Plumlee's a decent passer, if I'm not mistaken.
mhm.
But I think Collins is the most talented passer. I think he's got like 4 assists a game or whatever coming off the bench. Maybe not 4, maybe 3. I think it's 2.9. 2.9. 3 assists. It's pretty good for a backup center, I think. And, I think he would just, again, I don't know. That's probably like best case scenario. That's kind of dreaming, like kind of a pipe dream at this point. But I don't know. It's a nice guy to mention, I guess. But
No,
Damian,
you're totally
Damian,
right. No, you're right. Like the 2.9 assists is for a guy coming off the bench, like that's awesome. And if you can get that and plug him in for some bonus, like you were saying, Like, all the better. If you can find, like, I think Mike Brown was saying that he doesn't want Cousins because they want centers with a different look than Sabonis and to change the defense. I don't know if he was saying that, to be honest, or he's just like, well, this
It
is the
seemed like,
case.
it
Yeah.
really honestly seemed like well, hey, look at it this way about Metu.
Yeah,
Because it seemed
exactly.
like the ship was starting to sink on Metu when he around that time. Because I think that was like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be great to grab a guy who could fit in, pass the ball well, grab some boards, provide some, a big body down low. So I like Zach Collins. Again, not sure how realistic, but I mean, McNair is looking at everyone, just like you probably are trying to do this, just like I am. So um, if he can somehow try to snag any of these guys so far you mentioned, I bet he's trying to make an offer already. But it's so hard. Trades just in general for the Kings just seem I don't feel like we have a lot of flexibility, especially with our cap space, and just like, well, who do we trade? Like
Hmm.
Terrence Davis, like we said, Trey Lyles, Rashawn Holmes. Like, does anyone even want Holmes? But other than that, I
No.
mean, most most people are kind of untouchable, or Alex Len. But other than that, like everyone's kind of untouchable. Mitchell,
I'm,
I think he's not untouchable, but like for one of these guys, like if you trade Mitchell for Zach Collins, well, now you're just opening a hole at the
yeah,
backup point guard.
you better be getting a good backup point guard somehow.
Exactly. So it's just like the Kings just don't have a lot of trade pieces, which why the Noel at this moment makes the most sense still because they probably have to give up the least for him, right? So, but anyway, sorry, you're gonna go into Damian Jones, who I love. I love Damian
Yeah,
Jones.
and it's just like, I mean, you go to a new team, it's not necessarily working out in his favor in terms of earning minutes. And I'm not following the Lakers in any way, so I don't know what the issue is with him. But it's like, I don't know. I mean, like, it'd be hard to believe that he couldn't, in some way, I mean, replicate what he did late down the stretch last season. I mean, he was essentially backing up Sabonis there for a second and then filled in for Sabonis after he got hurt. And it was tremendous. We had nothing but good things to say about him. And I think his ability to kind of be a kind of a mobile center that plays the right way, never plays outside of himself. Did I say run the floor already? Can be a kind of a roaming rim protector. Probably would fit right into learning Mike Brown's system. He's a really smart guy. I think he's got like a master's degree from Vanderbilt. Disciplined guy. I think he'd be perfect. Now he just signed with the Lakers. It felt like the Kings would have probably retained him if they would have been able to trade Holmes, but they couldn't trade Holmes. So, I mean, if you could find a way to get him back here, that would be awesome, But again, it's hard to envision a realistic scenario off the top of my head, I guess, how that actually works out, right?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much Jones is playing. I mean, he's played in 16 games this year, averaging 9.9 minutes in those games, 3 points, 3 rebounds. I mean, but now Anthony Davis is hurt, so they're probably going to need him to step up now.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I would love to get Jones back somehow. And I don't like Terrence Davis maybe for Jones. The Lakers are always looking for shooting, right? And Terrence Davis,
Yeah, that could be that actually is interesting.
even Trey Lyles, man. Like I love Trey Lyles, just like I love Damian Jones. But like
And
those are two
Terrence
guys who can
Davis
hit.
too. I love Terrence Davis as well. So it's just
Yeah,
like,
but they're both good 3 point shooters, and that's what the Lakers really need right now. So I could see them getting Jones if he's really not playing that much in LA, and if they just don't really need him. Like, might as well get some shooters around LeBron while you have him, and AD while you have him healthy. Well, I mean, he's not healthy right now, but while you have him, I guess in general.
when he
Um,
comes back.
yeah, exactly. So I could see. I mean, maybe I'm just hoping, but he just seems like he's not playing too much in LA. So I could see the Lakers being interested. Like, oh, okay, like Terrence Davis for Damian Jones, like because Jones he's at a pretty like minimal contract, right? It's not. I don't think he's making a lot
Yeah,
this year.
I think it's
So
like 1 or 2 million.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can pick him up for that or trade him for that, oh man, Damian Jones was so good at the end of last year, and even not at the end of last year. I think he was good all year. He was just kind of fighting for minutes, especially
Hmm.
when Holmes and Sabonis were there. And you had Lynn as your backup center last year as well at points. So Jones, great interior guy, good on the switch, good
Yeah,
on
that's
offense.
the big
Doesn't do
thing.
too much, but he showed that he had a little more to his offensive game than we thought. So I would love to somehow get Damian Jones back. I mean, I think him and Noel out of those people. Oh, you kind of sold me on Zach Collins too, but realistically, Jones and Noel. If you can get one of those two, I'd really fill in that hole at the center position.
Yeah. Zach Collins is probably the least realistic, but I think you really convinced me that Jones might be more realistic than I thought. That is a good point. I mean, we were talking about that earlier in the season. We're like, man, it's a shame. We brought up Sam Merrill. We were like, man, it's a shame the Kings didn't keep Sam Merrill because they could have just, like, maybe they could have done a swap without really losing any of their core guys or rotational guys. Um, but hell, I mean, like, if we're talking about having to give up something, which is a reality in professional sports when trades go down, you know, Lyles, Davis. I mean, those are two of my favorite players to watch on this team. Um, just the way they play the game. Um, but that would certainly make this team a lot better if they had Damian Jones as a backup. And we've been saying that for a while.
Yes,
But
we have.
yeah,
We've been saying it for a minute. Um, yeah, I mean, I can't say more than. I mean, if you listen to our show long enough, you can tell we're big Damian Jones fans, but for a good reason. He does everything so well, and he's just a great you off the bench. He just
yeah,
does like one of those things, just like everything right kind of guy. Doesn't do too much. Does his role what he's intended to do. So I think Damian Jones is in reach. I really do.
man, it
If
would
you
be
make an offer,
freaking awesome if they could figure that out because I think that would really help this team.
heck yeah.
Really, any of these guys would just really be an upgrade if they could figure it out. Because that is, we're as much as the backup wing thing has been around for a long time as an issue and drives a lot of Kings fans nuts. The gaping wound right now is the backup center, and these guys would be terrific fill-ins for that.
Hmm. Definitely.
But Monte McNair is going to have to figure out a way to do that. And speaking of Monte McNair, um, Mark Stein reported, I think on Sunday, that Monte McNair, who kind of dodged contract extension talks and caused a little mini stir, at least a little discussion as to what the hell was going on. Was he in danger of losing his job? Was he gaining leverage over the Kings? What the heck was happening? Why was he not getting an extension when he had clearly had a terrific offseason, adding Kevin Herter, signing Malik Monk, and drafting Keegan Murray? And now Mark Stein reported that Monte McNair is expected to um, get a contract extension early in 2023, the flip of the calendar year. So that's pretty cool. But it's still weird. And as Mark Stein noted, a lot of people in league circles kind of found it curious that it's taken this long. So people around the league are just as baffled as us that of the timing, I guess. It's bizarre. It's good news. I mean, as it should be. Um, but it is interesting still. I mean, any thoughts on this? This is a big report.
Like good. Dude deserved a contract extension a long time ago. Um, so I'm happy that there's some talks or rumors or whatever that he's probably going to get one sooner than later. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure what took so long to get to this point. But I mean, it definitely helps that the Kings are winning this year. But I feel like it was not obvious, but we had a good reason to believe that they would do better this year, considering the team he built before the season started. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like good. Like keep this man in sack as long as you can. This is I mean, with 16-year record playoff drought, and like at the moment, he's on pace to break us out of that. So if anyone's deserving of a contract extension in the NBA right now, it's this man. So glad there's talks, but I can't wait till uh, the pen's on paper, right?
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things is, and I can't help thinking this, and I don't know, there's no real indication, but it's just like when you have the league kind of scratching their heads, like people around the league scratching their heads about something the Kings are doing, something tells me that the spotlight there goes to Vivek Ranadive. And this is pure speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised if Vivek was like, "Oh yeah, you had a good offseason. Well, let's see what happens in the first half of the season."
Yeah.
That just sounds like, I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching here, but that just sounds like that could be a plausible explanation. But
I mean, and nothing's off the table with Vivek, right? It's just like, okay, like he's done a lot stupider things in his time in SAC, so that could definitely be what actually happened. But who knows? I don't know. It's just so weird. He's like, he makes Vlade, seem. I mean, Vlade was awful, but geez, like he's just so much better already, competent. Um, yeah, and McNair we trust, right? At the end of the day, so
that's right.
McNair we trust, baby. But so deserving of that contract extension, and yeah, Vivek better just pay him out, man. That's all I gotta say. Just I don't know. I don't know what's taking this long, but like I said, I'm just glad talks. We're still finally kind of hearing rumors because there was kind of just like nothing. Even when it was brought up to him. It's just like, yeah, I'm just focused on winning. Just
Yeah,
focus
he like
on
avoided it, which was just like,
yeah,
oh, that was weird. That could mean anything.
yeah, exactly. So at least rumors are starting, even if wherever Mark Stein Substack. But uh, yeah, it's good news for Kings fans for sure.
Yeah. And I think this kind of seemed like it was going to happen as soon as he got Sabonis. I mean, it took a little bit for some people to warm up to that, but man, that was the move to make. And regardless of who you're giving up, I mean, that set this team on the right track. And I think moving on to something that's maybe a little more positive, we've had a lot of negative topics here, I guess. Not negative, but critiques and things that the Kings need to do. And, I guess the one common theme of the game on Monday was that the Kings' two best players played really well. And we know that Sabonis is an all-star. Just it's not a bid to be an all-star anymore. It's just it's a fact, I guess. But I think, because we talked about at the beginning of the season, like who has a higher likelihood of being an all-star before the season even started. And we were talking about, well, Sabonis, especially if the team's winning, because the team's going to be winning specifically because of Sabonis. He's going to be the catalyst at the center, kind of providing the framework that allows the train to stay on the track. Everything starts with him in a way. And that's remained mostly true, and we've talked about Fox being so important because he kind of dictates how far this team can go. He's dictating the height of the ceiling. He's the wind behind the sails, all these things. But he proved something by missing a few games, being off for a few games, I should say, and missing a few games, and then coming back. Because for a little bit there on that road trip, especially when he was out, the Kings really got away from playing their brand of basketball. They were down in assists. Their pace was down, and their defense wasn't as sharp. But as soon as Fox came back, all three of those things were tightened right back up. And that's no coincidence at all. And also, I think another thing that's important, the fourth thing, is the bench was able to play better because Fox plays a lot of minutes with the second unit guys at the end of the first and into the second quarter. And you could see all those things just bounce right back into what we were used to seeing when the Kings were winning consistently. And I guess this is a long-winded way of saying, man, I feel like that all-star case for Fox is still pretty strong, even though I feel like it took a hit. I think it's fair to say, right? I mean, it's still fairly strong. I think especially if the Kings continue staying as one of the top teams in the West come February, They,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard not to have both of those guys.
Yeah, as long as Fox doesn't have another stretch like he did of 10 games somewhere between now and the All-Star game, 'cause it's about what 2 months away, really, right? So, I mean, I think so too. I think, especially with the Kings winning. If the Kings drop off, but Sabonis is still putting up the same numbers and Fox is, I think Sabonis is still an All Star regardless, and Fox isn't. But if the Kings keep playing, yeah, they're still like, oh no, in a playoff seed in the West, and Fox is still putting up Fox type numbers like 25 a game, and putting the team on his back in games and carrying them and getting that national media attention that he has actually gotten this season. I think he's an all-star too, but he did have a bad stretch of games, regardless if it was his foot or not. It was like it definitely kind of put him into like that foggy area where I'm like, oh, okay, now he's in this gray area where he's kind of like a borderline all-star still. But it was nice to see him kind of pick up back to where he left off and kind of stayed at that level the last 3 games. So that's been nice, but it's really just going to depend on if he has another bad stretch. There's a lot of good guards in the West, a lot of good guards he's going to battle against. So yeah, that's another thing you got to think about too. Where Sabonis, he's just like, man, this dude is good, no doubt. Fox still has to earn it, just because of his inconsistency so far this season. And like I said, it's those 10 games really that stand out. But I think he's still on track to potentially, have a good chance to potentially be an all-star. But he still has to earn it. Where Sabonis, I think, has already done so.
Yeah, I agree. Just gotta from here on out figure it out. Stay in it. Don't get hurt.
Yeah. And if you get hurt, maybe just take a day off.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a bad look. I mean, like when the Kings lost at home to the Suns, and Devin Booker was just going off, and Fox was nowhere to be found. It's like that. That felt like such a bad look for All-Star chances. So you do have to avoid that kind of stuff, regardless if you're hurt or not. And also, you're talking about the winning being huge. I mean, the winning, as I was just pointing out, is predicated a lot on whether Fox is there and making the impact that he usually makes, because it does affect the team. Maybe not to the extent, I don't know if it's as a team, like in terms of team-wide effect from his presence on the floor. Sabonis probably still hasn't beat, but I think Fox has proved in his return that it's far more substantial than I probably imagined. So it'll also be not just dependent that he plays well to, I guess the three things kind of intertwine. He's got to win to be an all-star. He's got to stay healthy to win. And he's also got to stay healthy to be an all-star. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just kind of cross sections all the way around.
Yeah.
And so that's all. But yeah, he can totally do it. And
I think so.
I think the return and how the Kings kind of returned to playing like the Kings, that was a big sign that, like, it's still very hopeful. The hope is strong for him. Yeah, just gotta continue.
Yeah, I agree. Is there anything else we got on the docket?
I think we covered everything for now. Yeah.
Well, cool.
That's everything.
Sweet. Well, Kings play the Lakers tonight. Classic rivalry game. They're at home this time. I don't know. Beat LA, right? Maybe play cold as ice and just get the audio visual, the audio guy just like banned. Remember when when they banned that from it being played in arenas or something? It's crazy stupid.
Because what Russell Westbrook got his feelings hurt.
They should just do it anyway. Like, what would happen?
That'd be awesome.
Can you just get fined or something? Whatever.
They'll get the beam taken away.
Imagine. It's like, no, you lost your privilege. Adam Silver is holding it.
Yeah, he's just holding like one of those sun tanning like reflective things over it. Like, nope. He's got like NBA drones flying over it, just blocking it with a big tarp. Yeah. Nope. Not tonight.
Oh my god.
I don't care if you won.
Yeah. I love that. Oh my god. Well, let's find out. Play cold as ice.
That's right.
We'll see what happens. But yeah, second game of a 6-game homestand, and hopefully this game goes better than the game on Monday night against the Hornets. But it'll be fun as always. The Lakers Kings always fun to watch. But John, anything to wrap up with?
I think that's it. We'll just have to see. It's an interesting thing because it seemed like there was so much momentum coming back home, and then, like I said, they slipped on the banana peel. So
Slipped hard.
where they go from here is huge because this is an important stretch of basketball to capitalize on. If you're playing so much at home, you got to win. This is a tough conference. This is a tough league. So this is what playoff teams do. They take advantage of these things. Playoff teams go. You want to say playoff teams go 3-3 on the road? Well, playoff teams really got to clean it up here. So got to bounce back,
dude. So true, so true. But yeah. Well, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and as always, until next time, have a good one.